Welcome to Karate Cafe, your source for martial arts conversation since 2005. And now, here's your hosts, Paul Wilson and Dan Williams.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Karate Cafe. I am Dan Williams, and on my center line, to the right of my center line, to the left of my center line is my good friend, Paul Wilson. How are you doing, Paul?
Hey, Dan, how are
Are you
you? I'm
good?
bobbing and weaving. I'm
I know
here
you're
in
shucking and
the
jiving.
massive Karate Cafe studio
I know
dojo.
that's a beautiful space.
Ain't it though? It's
Yeah.
yeah, we once again, cleaned it up,
hmm
getting ready for class tonight, and then
hmm
see, and there it's gone.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
because no one thing defines us here at the massive Karate
That's
Cafe
right. That's
studio.
right.
How
And
have you been?
since I'm mostly a garage martial artist, I have a
That's right.
garage behind me. So, I've been well. The spring weather in Michigan is a little bit kooky. We've had 80-degree afternoons and 40-degree evenings, so it's
Perfect.
a little bit nutty. But other than
Oh,
that, I've been well. It's funny, I was thinking about getting back into the Wing Chun, and I
ooh,
got an email, and my instructor has retired.
wah wah.
So I guess I need to figure something else out. And when instructors retire and things like that, I don't know. You gotta kind of make your own path then and figure out what
I
to do
know.
next.
Maybe you're kind of a member of a sort of a lost generation of martial artists now at this point.
It's true. I am. I am. And I think too that it's one of those things, funny, we've talked about it so many times, like what's the meaning of a black belt and things like that. And I think this is why it's so important to have this is one of the reasons why it's important to have your own sense of, uh, I guess, accomplishment or pride in what you've done, or like, okay, my instructor's not there anymore to say, hey, Dan's doing a great job. Dan, Dan deserves this belt or deserves that belt. It's just, you got to kind of like figure that stuff out for yourself at some point. And when all that stuff gets pulled away from under you, um, you just, you have to sort of realize your own worth, even though there might not be anybody there telling you what it is.
All right. That sounds like a really good topic.
It does sound like a good topic. So what's your topic for today, Paul?
Hey, something about the lost generation, about
The
how Ronin
lost generation.
are coming together and getting their needs met. Like, say,
Yeah.
if their instructor retires or whatever. The
hmm
and the internet has, for good or ill, made a lot of things. I mean, Skynet's coming up, so we've got that to look forward to.
I hope so.
But
Man.
between the worrying about running out of your AOL minutes and dialing in, and the robot overlords, somewhere in the middle, martial arts kind of got a helping hand,
Yeah.
from the internet. And one of the ways is people in your situation. Back in the day, right, like in the 70s and maybe even the 60s or whatever, pre-internet kids, back in the late 1900s, people would train, right? And they would train in Okinawa, they would train in Korea, they train wherever they train. And they may leave their, especially in the case of, I'll keep it in Okinawa because that's kind of my frame of reference. And they would go and they would train and they'd come back to the States or wherever they were
hmm
from, and they would start schools and whatever. And there was probably a sizable, if not large, amount of instructors who like never went to Okinawa again. Right? They're on the
Right.
wind. They're doing their thing.
Yep.
And some of that was, as we talked about on the previous shows, like 20-year Shodans and multi-ability system masters. That was back in the day. That one always sticks in my head. Was, the
hmm
guys that were like, well, I'm not going to get promoted again because my sensei was the only one who could promote me. Well, if you don't ever go back to Okinawa or bring them to you, you're not going to
Right.
get promoted. So you would have sort of that contingent of people, and then you'd have people who learned a little of this and learned a little of that and learned the other thing. Suddenly they're a master. Maybe they create their own system. Maybe they say they're a master of you name it,
Right.
and they do their thing, right? So flash forward 20 or 30 years, and you've got the internet, and and maybe that group of instructors or whatever have retired, have passed away, have you know, you name it, or maybe there's been interpersonal problems. Their group,
Political
yeah,
conflict within a martial
what
arts organization?
say that isn't so. Maybe, well, it could
Get
have
my faming
imploded
couch.
due to person. Exactly. Oh, where's my pearls? Where's my pearls?
Right. Where's my pearls?
Uh, the all that sort of stuff, and
Yeah.
so for whatever reason they're out in the wind. Like our good friends over at the formerly the karate culture group. Like their instructor died, and they got together and they moved on.
Hmm.
So but not everyone has that sort of drive. So over the years in the internet world, we've run into people. I especially have run into people, and we have people on that listen to the show, and people on the Facebook group and stuff
Hmm.
like that that are no instructors. Maybe they don't even have a dojo. Maybe they moved and they're kind of in the way, but they through the internet they've found a group, or they've fomented a group, or they've gotten together. Some are formal, some are less formal, some
Yep.
are certificate granting authorities, as it were. Now, not to say this is all new. Over the decades and whatever, I've seen people who have created their own federations. There are people who have left my group and created their own federations of stuff. And is it big? Is it small? It really doesn't matter. Anyway, it's just making it easier to do that.
Yeah.
So, like, would that be something that you would be looking for in this case? Would you be looking for another Wing Chun group or another eclectic martial art group, that sort of thing?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that for me, um, so I've kind of been all over the place in martial arts, as people that have been watching know. And I think what I'm looking for maybe is something a little bit more traditional. And I I think that, well, one of the things we've talked about in the past is, to be clear about what your goals are in the martial arts. Especially if you're a new student or if you're going to a new school, it's not it's not really good, bad, or otherwise, right? It's just aligned with your goals or not aligned with your goals. So if your goals are um, healthy exercise, community, um, things like that, then Tai Chi, Aikido, Taekwondo, those are all going to be great. If you want to, if your very, very highest priority is um, self-defense, in my personal opinion, uh, you're going to have to get into a ring somewhere, right? You're going to have to train like an MMA guy or a boxer or something like that. You're going to have to do
Yeah, but
primarily
only for like
combat training.
17 seconds if you go against Ronda Rousey.
That's
Boom!
true. That's true. I didn't even watch that, and I know the
It's
memes.
well, you
I
didn't
guess
even
I
have
didn't
to,
miss
right?
much. Right. I didn't.
Here's
I only
here's our
missed
here's our
15
tangent.
seconds.
It was pretty impressive. I was like,
Yeah.
and it's over.
Yeah. And it's over. Yeah.
Which would
Well,
probably was how long I would last against Gina Carino too. So
that's right. Well, and so yeah, again, it's to me, it's making sure that your goals are aligned with the school or organization that you're joining. I have there was a group I was with. We kind of joked about the names of these things, right? It was the Organization of Non-Aligned Martial Artists or something like that, and is very descriptive, right? But essentially, it was a bunch of guys who fell out with their organizations due to political stuff. A lot of it's due to financial stuff. It's really weird the way a senior instructor will say, you want to start your own school. and that senior instructor will say, well, you got to kick 10% back to me. Or I knew one that they said when your students get to green belt, they have to come back to my school. And it's just like, what? This,
Yeah. Yeah.
this isn't back in the day where I paid you for a service to train me. Now I am trained. Therefore, I can kind of go do whatever I want. It's to me, it's like if I got a welding certificate and then started a job and somebody said, "Oh, 10% goes to whoever signed your welding certificate." It's just like, what?
Yeah.
So those guys all fell out because of those kinds of reasons, and they were able to get together and share their arts. And what was cool about it is a lot of them were pretty similar. One guy did Kun Tao, one guy did Silat. There were there was a Shotokan guy, and so what ended up happening was is there was sort of a yearly gathering where um, individuals just said, "Oh, I'll do a 2 hour workshop," and we strung together a bunch of 2 hour workshops into a whole weekend. Had a ton of fun, and it was great content. So I think there are those places that can be found. I think there's higher risk with that stuff, just because you know people can lie, I guess, and that's probably less of a risk for experienced martial artists than it is for newbies. Like the benefit of an experienced martial artist looking for a new school is that I can kind of just observe a class and pretty much know what I'm in for. Know what is the atmosphere of the class? Is it highly structured? Is it hierarchical where everybody's bowing down to the instructor no matter what he says? Is it like what kind of class is it? And make sure that aligns with my stuff. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe like I said, I enjoy going into garages and doing martial arts in garages more than I do in dojos, official dojos.
I'm kind of, well, here I'm in the dojo at the Massive Karate Cafe studio, but at
Of
home,
course.
I'm running
Yes.
my virtual class in the garage. So, that's arguably, you could say to a greater or lesser extent, that's where a lot of martial arts probably like generated from, like the
Yeah.
garage of the 1800s or whatever, is through
Hmm.
garden. The lore of training in the getting together and training in the cemeteries and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
finding someone with the like mind, you know, I, so in this case, you're not looking for necessarily a Wing Chun group. You're looking for a group of martial artists. So I mean, would your goal
Well,
be to like learn more Wing Chun, or would your goal to be like a better martial artist?
I think my goal overall would be to be a better martial artist. I think I've been thinking about getting back into my training um just for reasons and along with that um I like Wing Chun. So if I had an opportunity, I mean, it would be a no-brainer if there were a school down the road that I could just, take the classes down the road. That would be great. Um, I've always said, when looking for a school, it's about the style, the instructor, the students, and the location, right? Those are the factors that I kind of look for. And I used to not put location in that list, but I realized how important it was really and for the practical sense of getting to class.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. I mean, geographic. I've had a couple of my students in the past say, when I asked like, "Oh, why did you choose me?" It was just I was close to where they live. It wasn't.
yeah.
Uh, a few of my students are people who trained in Okinawa and art or before or something like that, and so they were
Hmm.
gunning for it. But the majority of them are you're geographically desirable, and
Yes.
that the class met the right time and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's
Because
absolutely a factor.
that's the thing is there's a practicality to it, right? Oh, hang on. My camera is a little bit wonky. There we go. There's a practicality to it. Like if I found myself, I had my Wing Chun school. It was almost a half an hour drive. So I would have a half hour drive there, an hour class, and a half hour drive back. And class was like Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. So essentially, I'd get off of work at 5. My class starts at 6. So I either go right from work to class, uh, get there at 6 till 7. I'm not home until 7:30. It's like dinner in
At
bed,
best, or yeah.
you know? And so, yeah, and at best, right? And it's that hour round trip. Um, it's harder to go to be motivated, and it's easier to make excuses to be like, you know what? I don't want to take that time out of my evening to just like, essentially it's right in the middle of my evening, and it kind of blows the whole evening, right?
Maybe we should do
Um,
an episode on, finding the time to train. Oh, wait. We just did that. Two
I
episodes ago,
mean,
right? Yeah. Yeah, I think
lucky for you, you can watch that episode from
that's
two
right.
episodes ago.
Maybe I'll link it up here or over
Oh,
there.
oh,
Anyway,
getting fancy.
I think the kids can do that these days. I don't know.
Oh, nice. We'll have
The
AI do it.
tech team at Karate Cafe,
That's right.
Massive Studio, a little weak. One of the things to kind of like get back on the topic
Yeah, yeah.
is also just like not even necessarily finding a group of individuals to work out with, because what I was thinking about when we were starting to talk about this was like, the groups, people I run into that are like, that they broke with their federation, let's say, and they have been training for a while, years or whatever, had their black belts or whatever, and they had a certain concept of how they train and what they wanted to do and and how they looked at things. But they were on their own. They were, they would go visit other schools, or they would go train with other people for a little while. But, just nothing like really kind of clicked, or they would encounter something that would be like, maybe it's not for me, um, but thanks to the internet, everyone's on forums and listening to
Right.
podcasts and watching videos and and can reach out and go like, hey, this, can I go to this seminar? Can I go do that? Because
Yeah.
we are, I think, for relative to say, 30 or 40 years ago or whatever, martial arts are a little more open. I mean, that has a lot to do with MMA and the UFC stuff. That has a lot to do with the practical karate movement, which
Hmm.
probably many of the people that that started the practical karate movement, and people who
Hmm.
are now in it and are trying to become martial art influencers, and everyone has their own YouTube channel and stuff like that, were people who kind of went on their own and looked for this group to be a part of. And they're all, to greater or lesser degrees, like some of them are more formal and some of them are less formal. Some are just like a group of guys and gals that like to talk to each other about stuff and put videos on and yada yada yada.
Yeah.
And some are like they're generating certificates and they're treating each other as a board, and people are traveling to other people's schools to train and whatnot. And that's, and then people start making their own kind of culture, and then they start like, okay, now we're all kind of in alignment because we're all kind of in the same headspace, which is what essentially any system is, right? But
Yeah.
they don't necessarily have to be in the same system. They could still have, like I think our close personal friend Ian Abernathy's his group, World Defense League, or I can't remember what they call it right now. But I mean, he does a thing like if you join their group, I think you send them your curriculum, and they sort of
Okay.
vet it. And so
I
it
see.
leads some creators like, oh, maybe you should change this, or do this, and it's
Hmm.
so anyone coming to train with them, if they have any frame of reference, can go like, oh, well, this has been vetted by this group of people,
Right.
and a lot of this is all like who's your source of truth?
Who, right? Who vetted the vetters?
Right, who's watching the
Yeah,
Watchmen? Exactly.
that's
So
right.
it's and for most people that are starting in martial arts, although it's easier to do research these days, it's also easier to put bogus research out there or and come up with
People are far
incorrect
more
research.
likely to simply check your star rating on Google Maps than they are look up
Right.
what federation you may or may not be vetted by,
Yeah.
right?
It's all pajamas and punching and kicking. So but anyway, finding a group of people that the saying that I've always defaulted to is like still water can become stagnant. You got to be a
Hmm.
creek or a river. You need refreshment. So like for me, I have my federation, but I also have all our senior instructors. I have guys like you. I have my friends. I go visit dojo. That's the
Yep.
way I kind of refresh myself and stuff like that. I'm talking about people who are like out on their own and they have no one to help guide them to. Like you could have a federation with 70 people in it, and
Right.
you've got you know 4 or 5 people that are high ranked. Now, does the rank mean anything? No, because they're off on their own and they're not. It's relatively speaking, they're high ranked, or they're just more experienced, or they're more experienced than you. Then you can definitely have someone to lean on, and what do you think about this? There's definite value in that, and I think
Yeah.
it's much easier now because it's really easy to find people to tell you you're doing stuff wrong. You just post
Well, that's true.
anything on the internet, and
That's
people will
right.
tell you you're doing stuff wrong. But I think it's definitely rarer and far more constructive to find a group of people that will tell you, constructive criticism or positive
Yes.
reinforcement.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that stuff, it's sort of, I don't know, um, for the experienced martial artist, I think that there's a lot of value in that. There's a lot of value in having a group of peers, let's say, that can keep you in check, or you can bounce ideas off of, or if you're one of the things that we've talked about before is a a separate sort of ranking structure, if you will, for instructors versus non-instructors. So you can be a high level black belt, but not necessarily instructor. Those two skills don't necessarily come all in the same package. And for some people, they don't want to have to keep them together, right? They don't. I've seen a lot of schools where they say, well, I don't want to not promote someone to black belt because they're a phenomenal martial artist, but also they're not an instructor. Like they are not the kind of person that's going
Yeah.
to coach or teach somebody else.
Right. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think having people to bounce those kinds of ideas off of and say, hey, does this make sense? Does this not make sense? Um, that has a ton of value in it.
Yeah. Well, like we had that episode a while back on, does size matter? And it was fomented by a Krav Maga instructor who had posted and said, remember I've got a bigger student and I didn't want to be able to train, but I don't want this smaller student to get hurt and blah 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 blah, and that
Yeah,
changed the
yeah,
whole
right.
episode for us. And
Yep,
that's this person reaching out to their group. Little do they know that they were actually going to engage the entire internet
right.
from. I messaged the person and they never messaged back. They probably never even saw it. So it is what it is.
How dare they?
But exactly. I was fully expecting like who are you? And that's another sort of component of the finding your people.
Yeah.
Coming out of the wilderness is again it's like who do you trust? It's like, well, who are you?
Hmm.
If people are uh, somebody goes like, wow, you're a really good guy. You were really done wrong by your association or da 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 da. We should get together and do something. And then that comes up, but like very few people are like, hey, we should get together and I should listen to you. You should be above me. It's kind of a little bit like, well, everybody wants to be the big kahuna, but you got to have
Hmm.
little people beneath you, so
Little kahunas.
are you it's sort of Marshall Amway, right? It's like you're pulling people in. It's like we're going to create this federation, and I'm going to be in charge, as opposed
Right.
to we're going to create this association, and you know,
Oh,
we're
and
going to
there are
have.
dues, there are dues, by the way.
Well, when money comes into play, that's always a thing, right?
Uh-huh.
But I mean, it's again, just like everyone else, when you join a school, if it's a school that's on its own, all that money stays there. But money has to get paid. I mean, whatever. I mean, it's not like they make the big ass podcast money like we do, so we can afford all this
That's right.
really nice stuff in the
These
background.
fancy
And it,
dojos that we've got.
yeah, but I mean, it's but that's an actual component. Is like then you have to trust somebody that the $5 a month in dues you're sending to support this federation that is
Yes.
supporting you. That's another thing is finding what is the level of support you're getting from this group, because one of the other
Mhm.
factors that I get that comes to mind when I read about these groups and find these things is like they're making their own sort of culture, and it's like, yeah, are you guys just is everyone, it's just an echo chamber, which is just like when you're in a federation with like a
Yeah,
grandmaster and stuff like that, it comes from the
yeah.
top down, right? And then you
Right,
have senior instructor, da da da. But when you're in a
right.
federation of or an association
Peers.
of peers, essentially,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
there's some that are more equal than others or whatever because
yeah.
they're more experienced. I think probably it's like you would probably get a idea of the experience level of whatever. But then I think the danger is like, okay, we're all in together, and because psychologically we were hurt by the outside world, now anyone who says anything counter to the narrative that we have, it's a flame war, as they used to say back in the early days of the internet. Like,
Hmm.
oh, you don't. It's open and anyone can come in and express their opinion and everyone's cool unless it's counter to what we say or what we all
Yeah,
the core group kind of thinks, and
yeah.
then we're going to poo on you. And I think that is counter to, you have a home, you left the door open, you need to expect, well, just, I mean, the other day we had on a Facebook group, I shared a post about something and was kind of poking fun at, well, it was just kind of a historical document. It was kind of an interesting article, and just kind of poking fun a little bit about the whole "don't wash your belt" thing. And
Oh
it
yeah.
became a thing. It got a little ugly, and I think there was some value to saying both sides were a little uppity, and fine,
Yeah.
it's okay, cool, whatever. But that
Right.
there's not the open dialogue of whatever. And in martial arts, a lot of people get very like, well, I know the secret. It's like, well, but there's a whole lot of people in the martial arts, and you weren't at that meeting. I guarantee it. So let's all get together and
Yeah.
talk about this, and then try and find some happy ground on our pajama shenanigans. But I mean, so it's like, would you want a group that would be more open, or would you have a group that has sort of a head that's, you know, hey, we should do
I
this?
yeah, I think at this point, for me anyway, I would be like I say, I'm feeling like I want to do something a little bit more traditional. I want something that is relatively well structured. I want that I actually do want the sense of accomplishment as I progress, right? And I know that that's counter to a lot of the ethos and a lot of the ethos that I've even like said on the show in the past. Um, but there's a reason that we do it, right? There's a reason that we hand out belts. There's a reason that those classes are structured. It's that I don't know, it's the sense of community, it's the sense of learning something new. And that's kind of what I am looking for at this point. I think if um what I'm not looking for is just like, I don't know, a Dog Brothers group or something like that, where it's really like you get together and everybody goes, well, what are you going to do
Beat
today?
the hell out of one another. Yeah.
And like, I mean, usually these things do come down to um nobody nobody wants to learn each other's forms, right? it ends up
Cool.
coming down to like partner drills, and sparring, really. Because if yeah, and I think there is room for uh hey, we're gonna meet every week. Me and four other guys. We're gonna meet every week. And we rotate on who is going to introduce a concept, work on a concept, who's going to lead for that week. That would be kind of cool.
The thought
And
leader. Yeah.
you're but again, like that means that I got to do something every 5 weeks. I gotta think of something to
Oh,
do. I gotta lead once every 5 weeks. And
but
so I
that's
don't
part of your
know.
development.
Yeah, and I think that in that kind of ad hoc environment, if you will, um, it is less structured. And one of the benefits of a structure is that um, you're doing a lot of building blocks, right? So the overall curriculum of a particular style has been kind of hashed out over a long period of time. And what I have found in a lot of schools that are either like the martial artists that have created their own styles because they've
Mhm.
been disillusioned by their style or their organization or whatever the case might be, especially when they come from a garage, is that curriculum has a tendency to change a lot because where they started was they were disillusioned with a style, system, organization, whatever it might be. So they're breaking away from that and they're finding their path. Well, they're teaching you their path. And sometimes it's kind of a wiggly road, right?
Yeah.
So it can be frustrating in that you're doing something and you're there a couple of years and then you're teaching a new guy and the head instructor says, "Oh no, we don't do it that way anymore." And it's just like, "What?"
Well,
Um,
in some situations, that's like every year. Oh no, it's this way this year. And next year at the gathering, it's like, oh no, we're doing this.
yeah.
Which I mean, it could be like whoever it is working on stuff and comes at it. Sometimes it could be just someone people forgot and they like this now. I
Right,
mean,
right. Yeah.
that
But
was
I
one of the
think,
conversations that we've been having in my class.
yeah,
The virtual classes we're talking about, like when does something, and this could be a sub a mini topic or whatever, if I ever get motivated to do those, is like like when is a change like like, well, you're doing it wrong, you're doing the kata wrong. Why?
oh
Well,
yeah, yeah,
because it's like this, an agiuke, instead of like this, which is just in sort of a high block. And it's like, okay, yes, but is that a fundamental change or is that sort of an application change? Is like
right.
it's an upward thing, or if you're
Hmm.
adding, you're doing the block and you're doing a parry and then the block, as like because we
Right.
engage both our hands. It's like, does that fundamentally change the kata, or in this case, and that's an example, is like, or is it just, it's not wrong, it's just not the way the prescribed move, or like the official move.
The official move. Right, right.
Is like, but it's still a move that's more or less in that way. I'm not throwing a kick and then a big, huge, deep front stance and then whatever
Yeah.
to it. It's just another subtle move in there. Is, to me, that's sort of the progression. But there's a tangent.
Well, it's
There,
yeah, no, it's interesting that you say that though, because I think too, like a a style, if you will, is something that is just kind of defined by time, right? I know that in a lot of, I'm sure this happens in, I'm just not as familiar with karate, but in like Silat and Kung Fu, you have a lot of family systems because essentially the family takes on their version of the silat, for example, and that becomes Penjak silat or Kuntao or whatever it might be. It's families that then kind of break away and do their own thing. Will the real silat stand up? Like what does that even mean
Yeah. Who
anymore?
is it?
You
Yeah.
know?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
what I was when I was doing some research for the topics we were talking about, and I Googled, about, looking out at, like, when where the changes is like before World War II. Nowadays, I think in Okinawan martial arts in general, kind of where the bump in the road for a lot of people that are doing the practical karate and stuff like that are
Hmm.
going like pre-war and post-war. Pre-war was one
Hmm.
way, post-war was another way. As a sort of a general
Yeah.
kind of thing like that. And like a lot of the pre-war is like, yeah, there were family systems, but it was like sort of regional. Tamarite, Nahate, Shirate, they were all kind of like this. There was village systems and family systems, but they were all, for lack of a better term, sort of the same thing. They were just the version of the same thing, which is a system. A system of Shonryu, my system. Shonryu is, there's several different branches of that system of
Right.
karate, which is the style, which, we did episodes way back in the day, like what's a
Yeah.
system, what's a style, what's a, So,
Right.
and so there were, like, your family did it like this, like literally, like next door, your family was doing
Hmm.
karate,
Hmm.
and in this case, let's say shirate, that way, and it probably looked a whole lot like the one you're doing
Yeah.
in your garage,
Yes.
but with little subtle differences, right? And
Yes.
then, and for better or worse, people are better instructors, people are better martial artists,
Yeah.
and there's and things got lost, things got changed, things maybe skipped a generation, yada yada yada. And
Hmm.
then post World War II is kind of where, right before World War II, it probably really before World War II. But anyway, after World War II, things started maybe codifying into much more like, this is Shonru, this is Goju, this is Wechuru, which is a whole different thing. Which is, like there was a whole,
Hmm.
like, these two things kind of mushed together and became this thing, and now it's this
Yeah.
thing, and then
Yeah.
now that's almost like a style, although it's still punching and kicking. But so
Yeah.
it's like where that
Yeah.
stuff kind of breaks away. But there's always still in each one of those things sort of a guiding, person, like a head or whatever,
Yes.
and they're
And
dispensing rank and da 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 da. A group of individuals is sort of an association of different things like that. Like, so, like, to get back to what you were talking about, like having got people together, and like, 'cause that's why I used to do my the Bunkai seminars. When I did that, was like
yeah.
the first one, I did, I was kind of like, I'm teaching it, even though that's not really in my style. I was like, I'm not teaching it because it was open. So then the next year, I kind of referred to myself as leading it. I'm leading the seminar. I kind of set the topic and the goal, and I have some material to work on.
But this is a
And,
collaboration here.
but it's kind of, but
Yeah.
from that point, I went like, Taekwondo guy and, Kempo guy and Kyokushin guy and all these different flavors of karate that showed up and whatnot. And I was like, you do what your system says.
Yeah.
This is the entrance criteria. They're doing this, and this is a way of looking at that technique relative to the kata, whatever.
Hmm.
But whatever your system says goes. So you do it your way, and
Yeah.
then and you work with somebody who's not in your system, or you start in the day, like, you guys all pair up, you work out, and then in the afternoon you switch, and then we review and blah blah blah. So that way you're working with somebody who's not in your system, and you get to show what your system does, they get to show what their system does, and you get to kind of
Yeah.
do the collab, as the kids say. And then I think the third or fourth one I did, that's when I started going like, I'm truly like leading it. And I had other people. I was like, okay, yeah, I want you to teach a section on your kata of choice, or you teach your section on it. And I had other instructors going. And so that's what I was kind of doing. I was like, okay, it's your turn to lead. I kind of led the thing. This is the
Yeah.
thrust. I said, this is what I want to talk about. And this is the kind of thrust of the seminar. Teach something along that lines. Go. And it took a lot of the pressure off me. It was great. All I had to do was
Right.
tell jokes, and I had a little thing, and I'd kind of try and bring it back and herd the cats a little bit. But I mean, for me, that's the association. I find that
Right.
description that you like kind of enticing because it's like you can unplug your brain and just train for a little while, and then
Yes. And
you get to
one
go
of the
like,
yeah, one of the things I was thinking of as you were talking is that um I think the perspective on that stuff is going to be different for an experienced person versus a non-experienced person. I think that if you don't have experience, I would advise people that they just they join a relatively traditional school that meets their goals.
yeah,
Because like I say, in the garage, for example, sometimes techniques will change, sometimes philosophies will change, sometimes the curriculum will change, sometimes the requirements for different belts will change. And so all of that shifting ground underneath you while you're a beginner trying to learn just body mechanics, basic movements, how not to hurt yourself when you punch and kick. I, I think that it is more important to have a consistent training experience than anything else.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. That's in. I've told many people that, which was told to me when I first started, was I kind of thought Aikido was kind of cool, and so I was like, I want to train Aikido, and I was
Hmm.
green belt or whatever. And my grand sensei, my sensei, who has a black belt in Aikido and whatever, we were talking at one of our camps, and he said something about it, and I said, yeah, I'm really interested in Aikido. I'd really like to train in that. And he said, well, wait till you get your black belt.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, he says, because then you have your foundation, and then you can
Yeah.
it may be a little confusing because there's some differences and yada yada, and now looking back, I'm like, absolutely, it's absolutely, that's what
Yeah.
I tell everybody. It was, and I say, like, if you don't want to get a black belt in what I'm teaching, that's fine, but go get a black belt in something so you have that foundation and it gives you a framework and a reference
Hmm.
to learn all the other stuff.
Yeah. And
Um,
I
you
would,
know,
at the same time, I mean, I think what you're referring to is wait till you get your black belt, which is wait until you get your black belt to train seriously in something else. If you're just going for a weekend to mess around with your buddy who trains in Aikido or whatever, I encourage that practically, right? Like I do encourage that. Like
right,
you
yeah,
should experiment, play, and you should do those things, but also keep in mind, and if you're gonna do that stuff, then what what I would strongly advise against is like don't take two striking arts. Don't take two grappling arts because things are going to get real confusing real fast.
yeah.
So yeah, lay that foundation. In fact, as we were talking, I just thought I should check out the Taekwondo schools in the area. My kicks were always
Bite your
strong.
tongue.
Right? My kicks were always strong. It's a
Maybe you could come to some sort of virtual karate class that you know about sometime.
I need people. I want people around me.
You
I need
got We'll clean
people.
the garage a little bit, and
That
I'm
sounds
just
like a lot
saying.
of work. I just want to
My
pay somebody
point
else to go
is
use
this.
their garage.
Oh, there you go. So you're a
Uh-huh.
student,
Yes.
not you're a customer, not a student. That's fine.
That's
Yeah.
right.
No.
That's right.
So I mean, to kind of bring it back on the topic, that's one of the things that the internet has kind of helped. Has had all these people can find a group of people, and there are more tools. There's Zoom. There's
Yes.
there's I mean AI and
Self-published
searching
books.
and
There's
self-published
YouTube.
books,
Uh,
YouTube. There's all kinds of stuff
hmm.
to kind of help you go like, oh, that might be something that I find appealing and helps me. There's high quality podcasts you can listen to. There's ours. There's all kinds of stuff that you can see. That's
I
a
love that you say high
boom.
quality podcast and then say there's also ours.
Well, I kind of keep
You
it
know.
self-deprecating. You know me. The because I've been told as much. Anyway, yeah. I mean, so there's all kinds of things. Like, I mean, Zoom. It came up in my Facebook memories the other day. It was. Well, I guess it wasn't the other day. It was a few months ago. But it was like when pandemic, and it was like our first class, right? Our first like online class. And like I look at the way it looked just because that was a screenshot, and I was like, hey, because like now I've got, lights and two cameras and a mic and, all kinds of stuff going on. And,
Right?
I came up with, and the first one was like, we're going to do some punching and kicking,
Yeah.
and now that's like a whole subtle art, and but it's becoming an important part. And people are doing webinars, very, very
Yeah.
often you'll see things where people come to my webinar. I talk about it all the time. Like, if someone wants one of us or both of us to like pop into their class and like lead a class or provide some sort of whatever, reach out to us and we'll do it. But it's like it's possible because of the internet and the internet
That's
tools.
right.
The downside is it's also possible because of the internet and internet tools. So you are with somebody, but you're not with somebody. You're not in the same room with somebody, and
Hmm.
that's an important component. But I do think an important component of finding all that is having that experience in there, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's people who are experienced, people that are black belt or higher usually, and that are serious martial artists that are just off on their own, and finding their people is just like it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing, it can be really help you develop and become better and create a community. uh, I think it is less like you're talking about the curriculum. I think it's less external progression. I think. I mean, there's
That's
people
a
who
good
are
way to
like,
put it.
we'll sign a certificate for you, and boom, you're a M15th degree, and
Right?
what? It's signed by
Right.
6 people that were on the internet.
That's
It's
right.
like you can become a pastor and marry
I'm a
people.
I'm
That's
a
like
I'm a noir belt.
right. Wow. The and survive. So anyway, the yeah, and so is it worth the paper it's printed on as much as any other? I imagine, except it's a group of people,
Right.
but you might get, I think, more. There's more of a chance of a legitimate internal progression. Of you've got someone to talk to, you've got videos to watch, you've got resources to hammer ideas off of, and work stuff out and send videos and go like, hey man,
Yeah.
what do you think about this? And it's a safe space. It's people who are supporting you, which is fantastic. But as long as they're not just telling you what they want to hear and forcing you to tell them what they want to hear, that's where you've got to have a little, I think, a little friction. Like we're going a couple weeks. I'm going to our annual camp, first one I've gone to since COVID, and there's a bunch of senior guys there. They're all senior. I know everybody, and it's like, but it's a chance for me to kind of talk and see people to do stuff, and
Hmm.
see the junior people behind me go like, oh man, I really need. They're much better than me now. I need to step my game up, and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
it's a positive room. There's no one's there to tear anybody down. But it's like it's an internal thing for me because refinement and stuff might be coming out and whatnot and stuff, but it's sort of top down, right? Because we have a grandmaster and
Yes.
yada yada. So,
Yep.
but
Well, and
it's a room full of quality martial artists,
hmm
all kind of on the same page.
yes. And I was thinking about what you said about an echo chamber, right? And I think too that a lot of times what happens to these more informal organizations is that because they're so they tend to be anti-centralization, anti-leadership kind of thing. What happens is that it sort of just dissolves then because you don't have um well what happens when let's say that question is raised. Somebody says, "Hey, this is starting to feel like an echo chamber." Who's there to do anything about it, right?
Yeah,
Nobody is. So you need someone to say, "We need to change that." Right? We
right.
need to get, how are we going to get more diverse opinions into our organization so that we don't head down the echo chamber route. And then you have to have somebody leading that effort, somebody organizing that effort. Like
Right.
you need people, not just like, I mean, you can have just, well, that's not true. I was like, it can be just a subreddit if you want, but even a subreddit has moderators, right? Like there's always somebody that has to pay attention to the care and feeding of the organization itself.
Right.
And that means you have an organization. And when somebody has some sort of disagreement, they're going to leave that organization saying, well, that organization is a bunch of BS. I'm just going to go off on my own. They're going to meet somebody else who went off there on their own, and then they're going to make an organization,
And then it
right?
starts all over again.
And then it
Yeah,
starts all over again.
it wasn't what it was when I started, and now it's
Right.
something different, you know.
That's right. Well, we're never
And
going to pay dues. Well, oh, gee, that yearly thing, there's not everybody can make it. And there was this one guy that we really wanted to come, but he's going to like his seminar thing is $200. So where are we going to come up with that money? I guess we're going to have to charge people dues.
yeah,
Yep.
you know,
This is why people do it.
someone's got to pay for the website. Somebody's got to
Right.
pay for, you know, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
You've discovered
it,
bureaucracy.
congratulations. The yeah, it's a whole, you know, and you know, it's like everything else. Like I watch some of these groups, and you know, I just kind of like, you know, let's set the timer, you know, and go like, see
Hmm.
how long it's going to take to implode. Like, you know, it's either, you know, everyone's all, you know, relatively young, and they're, you know, karate bros, and they're going to change the world, and you know, they've got all these great ideas, but because they're young in martial arts, they haven't realized that there really aren't any new ideas, and there's a reason why that idea isn't there. You know,
Right.
it may work in sort of a small group, you know, or whatever, but
Yeah.
it doesn't reflect out. It
It
doesn't, you
doesn't
know,
scale.
it doesn't scale, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and so, you know, and then there's the larger groups of people that are like, okay, yeah, great, we all like each other, da 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 da, and you know, oh yeah, we should all be promoted, and you know, stuff like that,
Hmm.
and yeah, we should start having seminars, and da 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 da. Like, well, no one came to mind, and you know, and then stuff happens, and
Yeah.
then boom, it implodes, and then they break off, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's like it happens with everything. It gets, you know, like as big as it's going to get, and then it topples over, you
Hmm.
know, kind of thing.
Hmm. So
Um,
I think that the internet has helped people essentially do what people have been doing forever. They just don't have to be geographically next to each other to do it.
right, yeah, you can have a family, quote unquote, but you don't need to be in the same house or the same village, city, country, yada
Exactly.
yada yada. It does. I like, you know, you don't have to be alone. Maybe that should be the name of the podcast. It's just like, you know, you don't have to be alone.
Right. Right.
Um, I like the Lost Generation, I like that better. But yeah, you know, so hopefully, you know, thanks to you, Dan, maybe we've got some people out there who are looking for, and if you are looking for someone to train with, Dan, you know, and you know, well, he'll come to my online class, and we'll all get together.
Right.
So, and if you are out there all by yourself and lost and alone, and you do some sort of martial art, and you just want someone to hang out with, ping me. I'll send you a link to to an online class. We'll get together, and you know, maybe we'll do something offline anyway. Um, anyway, that was a great real life topic. It's awesome.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And relevant to me looking for a new school and looking to get back into training. And
Dan, this is
y
all about you, man.
I mean,
The whole podcast, 20 some odd
I
years. It's
I
leading
know
up to this
that. I
moment.
just didn't. I mean, the
Leading up
first
to this moment.
one with like Gene and all those guys, they talk. I think the first episode was really just about me, right?
Pretty much, you
Yeah,
know,
I thought so. I thought so.
what
Gene
the
and
the Dan
Pete. Pete.
the Dan
Wow.
solution, the Dan problem. The anyway, but yeah, it's good. Well, and we should also keep updating on this after we throw it
Yeah,
on the inner tubes.
for
We
sure.
should maybe you'll get invitations to some of these groups that'll come in, and you'll, you know,
Hmm.
We need
Hey,
a new figurehead.
maybe next time we talk, I'll be training in Taekwondo. You never know.
I'm gonna go back to the
Uh-huh.
dojo here at
You
the
wait,
Massive
you
Aquatic
wait
Cafe
until I kick you in
studio,
the
and
head, then you'll be
that's
sorry, mister.
boot to the head.
Boot to the
Can we
head.
say that?
I
Can we
think
do
so.
that?
I think so.
Is that a copyright issue? I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway, Dan, that was a great conversation. It's great talking to you,
You too, Paul.
and we will talk to you all again very soon.
Bye-bye.